I don't think there's any event that more demonstrates the Versailles-like nature of our politics than the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But your article had an interesting angle on this. Like a lot of these, just really opulent, over-the-top, disgusting displays of wealth and insider status, it's covered up with a veneer of charity. So I've never seen anyone really get into this, but in your article, you lay out the numbers. The event raised $133,000 for 30 scholarships, a little over $4,000 per students, and they get a tour of the White House. To provide context on this paltry scholarship number, consider how much is spent on the weekend. A single corporate media outlet will often shell out as much as $200,000 on the political glitz and glam fest to entertain A-list guests. The venues sponsoring after-party events for the dinner charge a minimum of $250,000 for a few hours of cocktail snacks. There are countless invite-only brunches, happy hours, and side events employing a small army of caterers. Throw in the first-class tickets, hotel suites, chauffeurs, private security, and all the rest. Many millions of dollars are spent in a few short days purely for Beltway vanity. But the thin facade of a scholarship is perhaps appropriate for the event. What better way to illustrate the nature of establishment politics and journalism than a public interest farce? Now, obviously, you're not going to get invited. What do you think? Where do you think the journalists who are in that room are coming from? Do they actually believe the narratives that they push out to the public because they're drawn from a similar social class to the people that they're covering? Taibbi writes about that all the time. How journalists used to be working class and now they're drawn from the upper class. Or is it that they just want that access and don't really care? Like, what's your take? What are these journalists thinking who are in that room?
Well, I guess before I rip into the dinner, I will say that, there's a nice aspect. We're very polarized in the media and in politics. Everyone's supposed to hate each other and be at each other's throats. And this is supposed to be a night where the politicians, Republicans and Democrats, come together, right-wing and left-wing media come together, everyone kind of dines together. I don't think there's anything wrong with that aspect, but the class aspect, the kind of the fact that, there's supposed to be an adversarial dynamic between reporters and the government. And you have this moment where there are many journalists doing a very good job who are aggressive and investigating and pushing back on government and corporate lies. But for the most part, at big, mostly mainstream legacy media outlets, it's a symbiotic relationship. You get these beat sweeteners where you write a positive piece about a politician or a powerful person. They then basically give you inside access and give you the scoop. So the big political announcement, before legislation drops, they're given a pre-read so they can do a pre-write. So they have the first piece. They get fed all these morsels of information and access, so that essentially, we don't have state-run media. I guess there's Voices of America, but generally no government directly controlled media. But this culture of back scratching and backslapping that's in DC, in effect creates de facto state media, where the major reporters and press outlets are carrying water for the military and political class. And this night kind of encapsulates a lot of that, because, they're coming together, and it's this, as you said, this show of like, it's like Versailles. It's, celebrities, billionaires, all kind of feeding each other and celebrating the role of the Washington press. I mean, it seems phony for anyone, I think, especially in this moment where there's been kind of a deterioration of trust in the media. But it's been the same dynamic for decades, where anyone outside who really follows this type of thing scratches their head and says, what is this? It doesn't really make sense. And I've kind of casually known about this. I know people who attend these things. I didn't even realize this was a scholarship event until a friend actually texted me who was there, and he said, "Did you know this was a scholarship event? Did you know they just raised basically $100,000? I mean, they're spending probably about $10 million on this event if you had to add all of this together, and they're doing this fig leaf of public service." It's just it perfectly speaks to the kind of foundation charity world of DC that is a thin veneer for corporate lobbying or influence peddling. It's just, it's unseemly. Like you remember those stories about the Trump Foundation from the Washington Post and others that are like, oh, this, the Pulitzer Prize, big scoop that, Trump gave a small amount of charity for these foundations that were supposed to be for veterans and others. It's like, well, hey, look, the Washington Post and all of their other buddies in the media do the same thing to feed themselves, but they don't add that scrutiny because it's them doing it. If it's Trump doing it, he's the worst person in the world, and Trump deserves scrutiny for that. Those kind of phony foundations he was running. This is the exact same dynamic.
Please clap.